Glasses off, recording on. Let's wipe the eyeshadow, mascara from under my eyes, or smear it around, whichever way it ends up.
Yeah, I got to deal with my flyaways.
Yeah, well, we're tweezing this one in. It's Wednesday night, so we're actually past deadline for even releasing this, and we're recording it after. It's just been so busy, but everything's good.
It sure has. It felt like it was going to get less busy, and then I'm not sure that it did.
I didn't. I mean, I chose to just slam a karaoke competition in there just because I had room.
Why not?
And then I decided to slam in a holiday social singing thing in as well. So I thought December was going to be kind of open, and then I just chose to fill it with stuff that I'm organizing. You know, I'm working on...
Because you're smart.
Well, because I'm marketing Performance High.
Well, yeah.
Oh.
All right, let's jump into our crazy week.
It's been a crazy week. Okay, so we had an open jam. I can't believe it was only a week and a day ago. Wow. Doing a lot of stuff. So this was just like Joe and me and Jake Cohen and Eva Himmeline from two of our students. Mm-hmm. We got together and just played music together. We thought it was going to be a little bigger, but a couple people canceled, so it was definitely on the small side, but it was fun. I like all those people, so, you know, good hang.
And you guys just hung out and played some songs. And...
Yeah, and told stories and laughed. You know.
Yeah.
It's super chill.
Yeah, it's great.
So that was easy. That was Tuesday. And then Thursday, Maria Bamford.
Was Friday.
Friday. We went to the Paramount Theater for the first time.
Which we've never been to the Paramount. One way or another, just had never been there.
Good thing we didn't sit at the front of the balcony, huh?
That would have been not okay with me.
Quite a view down.
I did want to sit in the balcony because I wanted to... We hadn't been there before, and when you're in those larger theaters, I wanted to get a real sense of, like, the room.
Yeah.
Which if you're on the floor or you're close,
you
see the stage really well, but the room's behind you, so you don't really get that sense of space. It was oddly, I will never take the time to look it up, but I would not be surprised if it's either just the same era as the Pueblo. Memorial Hall that we played. It's almost the same size. They're both about 1,600. I think Paramount might be a little more, 1718, but they looked really similar. So I don't know if it was like the same company or just that was the trend at the time they were both built.
Just ornate decoration, 2 tiers of balcony, so mezzanine and then a balcony actually. And it looked big. I was looking at the stage and looking at Maria, thinking, "Wow, we played on a stage like." We saw it from the other side, but we played on a stage like this big. Wow. It looked bigger from the audience's side, I think. Well, different.
It does look different, but it gives you a window into going like, oh, that's how we looked.
Yeah.
You know, and we did talk on a podcast about, you know, seeing video later and being like, wow, like all the stuff I'm doing does not translate because it is just big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you think of Maria's show? Did you have any takeaways? I love how you always compare comedy with music and other art forms because it's your favorite art form, right?
I think at this point it really is. I looked at my Spotify, like here's...
The Spotify Wrapped?
Yeah, the Wrapped. And it was... Number 1 was Run the Jewels. Which moms, don't go listen to Run the Jewels because you will not like it. But I apparently like it. I had no idea I listened to mostly Run the Jewels. And then everything else was comedy.
Was Run the Jewels at the top?
Run the Jewels was number 1.
That must be from flying.
Yeah, some of it is flying, yeah. I will listen to one particular Run the Jewels song for the entire time the plane is in the air.
However you have to deal.
Yeah. It helps sometimes. And then, but yeah, the rest of it's stand-up, and I think that's really becoming my, favorite thing. Because it combines so many things. I mean, it's got ideas, it's got, like, analysis, it's always built up on, like, picking apart something that's going on.
Which is similar to songwriting.
Very similar to songwriting.
A new perspective on a thing we all experience.
Right.
Or a new way to describe something that we all experience.
Yeah, just a new angle. I mean, there's a million love songs, and somehow somebody comes along every once in a while and is able to write yet another one that has a little bit of a different angle. And stand-up's very much that way. And it's also it's a lot about rhythm.
Yes.
Like, it's pacing, it's rhythm. It's very much like writing a set list where, like, the right thing needs to happen in the right spot. It's not just... is that a funny thing to say? It's like it's got to be in the right spot.
And it has to have a whole arc, and then hopefully it connects at the end to something nearer the beginning.
Yeah. I was struck, and we've seen Maria before. We talked about it on a podcast, and in a smaller room, I did think she was better.
She was better, or we enjoyed it more?
I thought she was better.
Okay.
In the small room. I think she was a little more, and it makes sense, and this is true of music artists, she was a little more able to be in the moment.
Oh.
With 200 people versus it's very hard to be in the moment with 1,600 people.
Right.
And that's not a knock on, like, oh, she was better a couple of years ago when we saw her. It's just that, like,
how closely can you connect?
Like, many artists are going to be better in those small rooms. I'm better in small rooms. I'll tear a small room apart. You know, like, it's just it's just easier to kind of run it, you know?
Yeah.
But that said, I thought she was amazing. I thought she made everything bigger. In a lot of ways, she was doing a lot more moving around. Like, you could definitely tell that, like, oh, she knows how to perform in this bigger stage, in this bigger room. That, like, stuff needs to get bigger.
Right.
And you give a punchline, and then you're like, oh my gosh, you're freaking out, and you're walking in circles.
Right.
Whereas in a smaller room, you just wouldn't do that big of an act out. You just kind of do the joke and then move on. And that was the main thing that I saw was, the pacing was slower.
Okay.
And I think there was, and artful the way she will, like, say something and wait for it to fully land, and that sort of almost like we talk about stage talking, wait for the laughs to get all the way to the back of the room before moving. Don't just move on.
Right.
You just delivered your punchline. Wait for the whole room. And sometimes it even becomes funny a second time because any comedian is spending so much time, like, considering the, like, whatever the emotion is, like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then just, like, sitting in that. And it just, I thought she was great. What did you think?
I don't have anything to say. My brain has been too full of details. I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
Very much.
And it was kind of a blur, I mean, in the way that any good show is.
True. Yeah. I remember what we talked about after the last show. Last time we saw her was that it was completely transporting.
Right.
That time did not exist. Like, we got to the end of that show and it was like coming out of a trance. And it was a tiny bit different this time. There was still a sense of complete engagement, but I didn't completely have time stop for me this time.
I didn't either.
And I think maybe it's because we weren't in that small room, really closely connected to her. Yeah.
There was still I felt a real sense of letting go after the first few minutes, in the sense of, like, oh, this entertainer has this under control, and I can sort of let go and stop consciously thinking. I can just sit here and enjoy it because I feel very comfortable that they know what's going on. You know?
Yeah.
And they're going to give me a very nice night. And it was great. But the Paramount, what a gorgeous theater. Downtown Denver, really easy to get to, cheap parking.
If you use Spot Hero. That's our recommendation this time. The app, Spot Hero.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can reserve a parking spot in advance. You can do it 5 minutes in advance if you want to. But you can usually find really cheap parking near the events that you want to attend.
Yeah.
It's like unused parking garage spaces.
Yeah, usually. You know? Yeah. And then, so, you know, they give you a little, one of those little scan code things, QR codes.
Yeah.
And then you just, instead of, like, getting the paper ticket and then you leave and then maybe you got to pay a guy or you got to put money in the thing. It's just like, it's all done on the app. And I mean, parking for on a Friday night was $7.
Yeah.
You know, in downtown Denver.
Smack in the middle of downtown Denver.
The most downtown Denver. So
recommendation.
That was, and then it was like 2 blocks. Like it was like a 5-minute walk, less than 5 minutes. We were like right there.
Walk. Yeah, right there.
Yeah. So
that's fun.
That was Friday. Mm-hmm. And then Saturday we got up and we went and did Stargazers. We talked about that on the last podcast. Mm-hmm. And I guess, I don't know what the deal is, but we are booked there for another date.
Yeah, this is good news for them and for the music scene. So Stargazers went up for sale because the owners are ready to move on with their lives, retire. Sure. I mean, they've been doing it with love forever. And it sounds like they have an interested buyer. I mean, the documents aren't signed yet or anything. It's, you know, no deal is done until the deal is signed, but they have an interested buyer. It's contingent on something else, but they're moving ahead as if it's happening. So
and it's going to continue to be a music venue, I suppose.
We booked a gig in April or something.
April, yeah.
Yeah. So decent attendance. Oh, here's my favorite part. 2 parts of that show.
Right.
The 2 little girls. So there were 2 little girls, not together, just separately. There were 2 little girls in the audience.
Yeah.
And one of them like made her way up to the front of the stage, and she was like just standing there. She was holding a napkin and a pen. And I was like, oh, she's asking for an autograph. But she just stood there, and I like kind of acknowledged her with my eyes.
For like a couple songs.
Yeah.
And I did too.
Because I was singing, and I couldn't just like stop it. But I like gave her a little wave, and she'd give me a little wave back.
Yeah.
And then I didn't, like, I knew that ultimately I was going to leave the stage at the end of the show. And I didn't want to walk away with her still standing there. So during one of Julian's songs, I like knelt down at the front of the stage. She gave me the napkin, and I signed it there during the song.
Yeah.
And then the other favorite part of the show for me was a different little girl came up and gave me a little pink bracelet, like
I did not know that.
You didn't know that?
No, I did.
I can't believe you missed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a couple songs from the end, and she just like walked up and gave it to me, and I put it on, and I read it. I wore it for the rest of the show, and it's on my nightstand right now.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I know.
It makes me feel so good.
Wow, that's super cool. That's amazing.
It makes me feel like a Disney princess.
Yeah.
It makes me feel.
I think to a degree, I've said before, I think that's how you translate to.
Yeah.
With the costume and the power and
Yeah, and what I mean by that is it makes me feel like a fictional character. Like I'm playing a role, but it's. I don't know, that just something, seeing the response from the little girls that way brings it home. It's not just me pretending that. It's like, it's coming across enough that kids are entranced and want to give me things. That's not the first time I've gotten a bracelet from a little girl. It's maybe the 3rd or 4th time.
I know. And it's pretty funny.
It makes me happy.
Yeah. All in all, I would say it's... other than those cute things, it was kind of a standard show. There was some dancing. Yeah. Stargazer is a little more dinner theater-ish. So there's lots and lots of tables and only a certain amount of room to dance. I was getting maddened by the table that was like center stage right up front, the very right in front of you guys. And they were having a perfectly fine time, but they were like the most stoic audience goers.
Concert goers?
Concert goers. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. They were just like no reaction, and then a song went in and they would be like
2 little claps.
And I was just like,
oh,
I'm gonna get you. And I got him a little bit one time. But and they were having a perfectly good time. It was just frustrating me that they were like...
Well, you are the kind of audience member that they are.
Yeah, but you know what I don't do is sit directly up front center stage.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Both you and I are pretty reserved audience members. Like, we're observing. And it takes a lot for us to be entranced and like lose ourselves in a performance. It really does.
It absolutely does.
So we're usually just standing there, enjoying ourselves, but not going crazy or dancing or like screaming or anything.
And I will say, especially if, here's a good example of it. I try to not be in anybody's eye line, but especially if I'm watching someone I know, like one of our friends, I try to make sure wherever we are that we are not in their eye line or close enough to see them, or, you know, there's kind of a little corona of light around. And I try to make sure we're outside of the light.
Yeah.
So that you don't just see me sitting there paying very close attention, but
but not cheering.
Probably not smiling. Because I know that's gonna freak you out. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm gonna stay out of, like, I don't want to, you know. And I think, yeah. Well, anyway, it was a great show, and we just have to thank John and those guys and Evan and everybody down there for James Martinez on sound once again, which was great because he had run sound for us at Buffalo Rose the week before. And interesting thing, because they have the same model of mixing board, James was just like, I'm just going to save onto a thumb drive all of the settings from Buffalo Rose. And then when we got to the Stargazers thing, because it's the same board, he could just put in the little USB thing, and then it just popped up the same exact mix. And stuff wasn't perfect because the room's different and so on and so forth. But, like, we were like 90% there, like, right out of the gate. And it was really... And then we spent a full hour running our cover set. Yeah.
Yeah. That was it went really well for it being the second rehearsal on an hour of new material that we are sewing together with no breaks.
That would be the biggest thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, sure, an hour of material, not the biggest deal in the world, especially since it's all covers, but the fact that we have transitions for everything.
Yeah, and they came together really well. And for a band that, as a band, we've played together a bunch, but we haven't done that much trying to, like, run songs smack into each other. I mean, we run songs very quickly with Petty Nicks sometimes, but, you know, we're just doing a good job of, like, no dead space. Just, like...
A couple of really cool transitions, like the one from Rapture by Blondie into Night Fever by the Bee Gees.
Yeah.
A really smooth, like... It's not quite dissonant, but it's really, like, the groove stays exactly the same. Yeah. So we end one song, and then, like, you hear a new chord, and you're like, whoa, we're in a different color now. And then, oh, yeah, I know what this is. This is Night Fever.
It's very much like how a DJ would do it in a club.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's just like, there's not space
line up
between
the tempos.
It's just, you line up the tempos, and then it's one song into another.
Yeah.
And we used to do it I've talked about it a million times. We did it in a much less, and actually I was talking to Skiles about this. It was interesting. When I was doing the Jacksonville Beach Bar thing with the guys I did that stuff with, we basically just had 3 or 4 here's how you transition song to song in our pocket.
Oh.
And so it really wasn't like a different transition every time. It was just do one of the couple of ones. So when we would put together a set list or whatever, or it was just somebody's job to, like, if there's any confusion, just somebody start a song, any song. Just Sometimes Randy would start a beat, and you're like, what do you think you're playing, man? And you'd go, okay, got it. And then we, because you just couldn't have dead air. You know, you couldn't take a minute. And so if there was anything going wrong, it was like somebody would just jump on. Yeah. Here's the bass line to... I'm just going to start doing Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. I'm just going to start the bass line, and then I guess we're doing Billie Jean.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway, that was fun. Good drive back. And tonight, and it's the reason we are late on the podcast, is we had rehearsal with Cody Qualls for his Christmas show this year, which we've now talked about for 3 years in a row, I think.
Is this the 3rd year?
I think it is. Yeah, the 3rd year we've done it.
Really? I feel like it's the 2nd, but I could be wrong.
I think the first ones were a little less organized, but I think we did. I think it was Oriental was 3 years ago.
I didn't do the Oriental show. That's why.
That's why you didn't do it. You weren't the bass player.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't in the band yet.
Yes. Okay. So this is the 3rd year I've done it. 2nd year for you.
Yeah.
And rehearsal went great for the amount of material and the amount of new material, which wasn't a ton.
Yeah, not much new stuff. But for you didn't remember we had this rehearsal tonight until I told you yesterday. So you had last night to prepare. I had been preparing a little, but not a lot because I'm doing a lot of things. And I realized this afternoon that there were 2 or 3 songs that I hadn't looked at all. Two of them were new but easy, and one of them was This Christmas by Chris Brown, which was a harder song, and I worked on it really hard last year.
It's a very hard song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of chords and it's a lot of real jazzy changes. I mean, a lot of them are 2/5-1s, but like not all of them are.
Yeah, but thank goodness I worked on it so hard last year because it came back.
Yeah.
Pretty well. I mean, not perfect, but
yeah.
At least we have 2 rehearsals, so I'm good. You know, I have not been playing bass at all recently.
You know, I was gonna bring that up with you.
Not at all, because it really came to a head at that mid-September run of shows where I had 3 in a row, and I think a couple of them went great and one of them went kind of terrible, and I needed a break, and it's been 3 months now
since you've been serious.
I haven't been practicing at all for 3 whole months.
I was going to. I mean, it was literally written down for me to bring up with you in your quarterly girlfriend review, which is coming up next week.
And we've got travel coming up, and I've got travel coming up without you, and so I think I'm not really going to be playing bass again until the end of February.
The interesting thing, though, and we've talked about it a bunch, is that like you will continue working on music in general, and then therefore like you're gonna get just better at music.
I beg to differ that I'm going to actually be working on music.
Wow. Really?
I am working on business.
Yeah, well.
That is my focus right now. Performance high. That's what's keeping me busy. That's where all my... I mean, I didn't work on it at all during the rest of the year because of gigs and playing bass.
Well, that's true.
I need to get everybody more work. I need to still make the business more profitable so that we're set up for the future. This is really a pivotal year coming up.
It really is.
So,
and you know,
that's what's important.
And tons of exciting stuff coming because of it.
Yeah. Speaking of which,
boy, classes have been going like gangbusters.
We've had a lot of classes lately because we've smashed them all into the beginning of the month since it's December.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
We had. Let's see. Nate had a music theory class, which I really want to watch because.
Oh, yeah.
He put some work into those things, and it looked great.
And it is great to remember that you can watch those things at any time after the fact. You don't have to be available.
I think almost every single class we've had somebody who wants to watch the recording later because they can't make it at that time.
Right.
And we've had a good split between people showing up in person and people coming online. So this hybrid asynchronous model, I think it's got legs.
Right.
It's not like our classes are big, but they're about the size they should be for the reach we currently have.
Right. Which totally makes sense. I mean, if you go, this is the pool of people who are probably going to see the, you know, and then who's going to be interested in what. And, I just think it's so powerful that you can, at some point, we're going to have this crazy library of all these classes. I would love to see Nate's. I just happened to be at the studio, so I jumped in on Zoom from a different studio room and heard the last half of his first music theory thing.
Oh, the first one, yeah,
the first one. And it was so good. I would be very interested in hearing the, he's a great teacher.
Yeah, he
very
really
natural teacher guy.
Yeah.
And then I ran into Kelsey, Kelsana, in the hall because she had just taught her class tonight.
This is on marketing yourself as an artist.
Yes.
And I know you talked to her afterwards, but one of the things that I talked to her about was she said, you know, this was an hour and 15 or so, and it could have been an 8-week class. And I said, well, if you want to make it an 8-week class, let's split it up like the way we split up the stage performance class.
Yeah, let's draw it up.
Like do one session on marketing yourself on Instagram.
I love it and think it was out. And we were talking in the hall, Kelsey and I, and we're so on the same page about what people should be doing, particularly social media wise. And she was like, it's so, she was like, that's what I feel like everybody doesn't know how to do or doesn't want to do or doesn't want to figure out an easy way to do it. And I was like, I would say that's true 99% of my clients. They, and it's shocking how, the number of times I tell somebody that there are scheduling things where you can sit down and make all your posts for the week or the month or whatever, and then it will just automatically post. And like even that, almost no one seems to know.
Wow.
Yeah.
You'd think everybody would know that by now, but
you would think, but I mean,
only because we know it.
Anyway, and I'm gonna. I've got a couple of people I'm going to send to Kelsey for social media coaching.
Awesome.
And then I gave a class on in our series of Intro to Live Sound, and this one was specifically, ideally, the class was built for solo and duo performers, and both of the people who were online at the time did want to do specifically that, either duo work or solo stuff. And you know, it was a good class. It was pretty easy. I was we kind of, my motto lately, at least for what I do, which tends to be more technical, not always, but a lot of the classes are recording or they're live sound. And I'll just try to like rip through all the basics as quickly as I can, and then let's circle back to anything that somebody didn't get. I mean, by all means, speak up while we're talking about it, but if no one does speak up and say, hey, I don't understand that topic you just said, then I just keep moving, and then we've got plenty of time at the end to go, okay, now let's talk about everybody's specific questions, and they had a ton of questions, and it was great. And I was shocked that we wandered onto, I wasn't shocked that we wandered onto gear recommendations, but I was surprised at how much I love talking about gear.
That is definitely one of your passions.
It was one of the guys asked a question about like, what kind of stuff would you recommend? And I was like,
You're rattling off model numbers and
let me give you an overview of all the stuff that is made for doing those kinds of things, and what's good and what's, what I would do if I was, and gosh, do I love talking about gear. It was like, no one's asked me to tell them what I think about gear in a while, and here we go.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So anyway, let's keep this one short. Let's just
okay. Do we want to do a little what's coming up, or
no? We're not going to do any what's coming up. You're just going to have to find out about it next week. This is what's called a cliffhanger.
The cliffhanger is, ooh, what are Justin and Adrian going to do in music this week?
It's going to be pretty much the same stuff. So
no, I'm doing a new thing. I'm doing a thing I've never done before.
You are doing a thing you've never done before.
Never done it.
Okay, cliffhanger achieved.
Yeah. Tune in next week. We would like to thank our sponsors, the movie Cliffhanger, and as always, Performance High. Voice and Music Studio.
Thank you guys.
Bye.